Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to another timeline, another life. Our review retrospective on David Warner as the Unbound Doctor. Today, we will be looking at The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield, Volume 6, Lost in Translation. Released in September of 2020, directed by Scott Hancock. Lost in Translation stars Lisa Bowerman as Bernice Summerfield and David Warner as the Unbound Doctor. As always, there is a blanket spoiler warning in place because I do these unscripted. So if you do not wish to be spoiled for the title in question, in the description box below is the link to Big Finish's website where you can purchase The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield Volume 6, Lost in Translation. This set consists of 4 stories. Have I Told You Lately by Tim Foley, The Undying Truth by J.A. Prentice, Inertia by Guy Adams, mixed those up, Inertia by James Goss, and Gallifrey by Guy Adams and A.K. Benedict. If I was to rank these stories, I would rank them with The Undying Truth as the weakest, followed by Gallifrey, and then Inertia, and the strongest story in the set is the opener, Have I Told You Lately. But keep in mind too, thinking about this, Inertia and Have I Told You Lately are both tied. They are such quality stories that if you ask me at a different time, my thoughts might change and I might think Inertia is better. But that brings me into my point overall about this set. This is one of the strongest sets in the New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield range, and one of the strongest David Warner sets, certainly. Just to kind of backtrack a little bit, in the past, I've talked about my intention for starting this channel, because in the Doctor Who fan circles, there are Big Finish audios everyone talks about, Spare Parts, Jubilee, The Marian Conspiracy, Master. I wanted to start this channel to talk about and bring attention to the things no one else was talking about, the biggest one I did, for example, was the Six and Charlie arc at the time, and that is in part why I'm doing this look on David Warner's time as the Doctor. But, going into those sort of, in the Doctor Who fandom, into those smaller Big Finish circles that I hang around with, I'm kind of shocked no one talks about Lost in Translation. Overall, it is a fantastic set. It's probably one of the strongest sets since Ruler of the Universe. Again, the story so far kind of doesn't count because it's a anniversary celebration of Bernice Summerfield. There's only one Warner Doctor story in it because the other stories take place at other parts of Bernice's life. And then, of course, Buried Memories, The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield Volume 5, is a bit of a step down in quality from the previous Benny sets and the previous Warner Doctor stories, but yeah, I am just shocked, given the overall quality of this, that no one talks about this set in particular. Even the weakest story in this set, The Undying Truth, is not a bad story. It's a really strong story that probably in any other set, or nearly any other set, would be a highlight. So now to kind of break down the story a little bit and get into the individual details, and into my review, the key premise of this set, the key thesis is, as the title suggests, communication. There is a moment in the first story, Have I Told You Lately, that I think is meant to be the thesis of this entire set. Sort of during an argument between Bernice and the Doctor, she tries to recount something that happened earlier, and the Doctor just responds with, "I heard you, but I wasn't listening." So each story in this set, in some way, revolves around the theme of communication and just how important it is. Be it something that, needs to be said, the things left unsaid, the things that are being misinterpreted, all of those kinds of things that lead up to all of these stories. And we open with Have I Told You Lately, which is almost a two-handed play between Bernice and the Doctor. when the story opens, it's very clear something is wrong. Like, they are separated already. The Doctor seems to have fallen down a shaft or a hole of some sort. And, Bernice and the Doctor are separated, and they don't have a way to communicate. But independently of each other, they find a malfunctioning computer system that they slowly teach to speak because it has a vocal interface. It responds to verbal communication. So, in order to get the ship where they're on running and to communicate with each other, they have to teach this ship to speak. And again, as a two-handed play between just Bernice and the Doctor, it's fantastic. Really exploring their dynamic in a way that has not been explored to this point. Like, we've seen their bond develop over the course of these stories, but it's never really been explored the way Have I Told You Lately does. Also, just a little further down the line, the third story, Inertia, does this as well, in a different setting with a different premise. That's kind of why they're tied for my favorite. They're doing the same thing, but in different ways, so it doesn't feel repetitive. And prior to coming on the ship and starting this adventure, Bernice and the Doctor had some sort of argument. So they're not in the best place right now. The characterization of this Doctor in this set is particularly interesting. So obviously some time has passed since Buried Memories, The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield Volume 5. Remember, the premise of that set was after the events of Volume 4, Bernice is kind of showing the Doctor around her universe. And the Doctor was initially excited to explore this new universe. In fact, he initially came to Bernice in The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield Volume 3 because he was trying to escape his dying universe. And now here, in this set, Volume 6, the Doctor finds that he doesn't like this universe. Like, this Doctor has always been kind of grouchy. Sorry, my dog's in the room now. This Doctor has always been kind of grouchy, but now that he knows what this universe is like and knows that he doesn't like it, it's really amped up. Like, it almost comes off as him being kind of homesick. He never expressly says he wants to go back to his universe. He doesn't like this universe. And that will kind of be, well, not quite of a recurring theme, but that will come back in full force in the final story, Gallifrey. But yeah, so in this first story, Have I Told You Lately, the Doctor and Bernice have this language barrier between them because they have to communicate through a computer system that is just now learning to speak. The second story, The Undying Truth, sees the Doctor follow Bernice, or Benny, to what ends up being an extraction site for some kind of archaeological artifact. I'm trying to be vague because I don't want to give out spoilers if I can avoid it. Where they find the legend of this king called the Undying, who was supposedly immortal. And they find people excavating and extracting his body, and then they notice these strange goings on. And sort of the theme of communication in this story is manipulation. The Undying is preying on the Doctor, Benny, and our side characters in this story, preying on their fears and insecurities, trying to accomplish his own goals. And because they are so enshrouded by manipulated by what the Undying is saying, they aren't actually hearing the truth of what's going on, They aren't listening to what the other characters are saying. Inertia, like I said, the third story, is similar in a lot of ways to Have I Told You Lately. It is another mostly two-handed play between Benny and the Doctor, but with a very different premise. So at the end of The Undying Truth, the Time Lords notice this Doctor from another universe and try to abduct him in a scene very similar to one of the cliffhangers of the second Doctor's final story, The War Games. But the Doctor and Benny are able to escape, and they find somewhere to go into hiding. They find, according to the Doctor, a dull planet on the dull end of the universe and power down the TARDIS for fear that the Time Lords could track it if it was operational and up and running. And, while hiding, the Doctor and Benny spend most of their time in this little hut on an island with a native population. And while trying to pass the time and argue with the Unbound and struggle with the Unbound Doctor's greatest enemy, boredom, they have another similar breakdown in communication that they had in Have I Told You Lately. One of the common motifs that keeps popping up in this story is that the Doctor and Benny are playing board games, but there's always a point where it seems like Benny is about to win, so the Doctor changes the rules. Like, for example, at one point they play Clue, and the Doctor says, it's boring trying to solve the murder after it's already happened. just as one example. Or, when they play Snakes and Ladders, which I believe is a precursor or the more mature version of Chutes and Ladders. I've only ever played Chutes and Ladders, so I can't say for certain. And, when he rolls a double 6, and when he lands on a snake, he says, oh, if you roll a double, you get 2 extra points. Which also leads to this funny exchange further down the line in that story where he says, my rules are the only ones that matter. And I want to reiterate a point I made when I reviewed Ruler of the Universe. It's not just that The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield Volumes 3 and 4 are a better realized version of the 10th Doctor era, or a good version of the 10th Doctor era, but the Warner Doctor overall is just a better realized, better version of the 10th Doctor. So it's interesting to see this characterization of a Doctor I don't like, and see what it would be like if it was handled well. And all of this leads us to our final story, Gallifrey, which features an appearance from Narvin. Narvin is a character, a Time Lord, played by Sean Carlson, who originated in Big Finish's spin-off, Gallifrey. Gallifrey has gone through a long evolution as that series has gone on, so where it's at now is not where it started, so I can't properly sum it up, but I'll sum up how it began. Basically, when Gallifrey began, the idea was that Romana left E-Space after the events of her departure story, Warrior's Gate, returned to Gallifrey, became Lord High President, and then appointed Leela, another Fourth Doctor companion, who left and stayed on Gallifrey at the end of the story, The Invasion of Time. She appoints Leela her head of security. And in that initial series, Narvin, who was a member of the Celestial Intervention Agency, the Time Lord Black Ops, was essentially their main antagonist, played by actor Sean Carlson, who has played the role since its creation. Now, Narvin had, like I said, along with the series, Narvin has gone through kind of an arc. I haven't heard a lot of Gallifrey beyond that first season, that first series of 4 stories. I know there's more to it. And similarly, I've only seen scattered Narvin appearances here and there. For example, he cameoed in the War Master Series 2, and I heard a short trip that was focused around Narvin, a story called Erasure, which was really good. All of this to say that I know the character exists, but I'm not all that familiar with him. So Narvin's characterization here, granted there are external factors at play, I don't know how that measures up to his characterization in the Gallifrey series. What was going on there, where this story takes place in that series' timeline and continuity, and how Narvin's character would have been influenced there. Sean Carlson gives a great performance. Narvin is a fun antagonist for this story. He plays, Benny and the Doctor both play off him really well. All of this to say that it's a good performance. I just don't know much about the character. That was a bit of a tangent. But basically, the premise of Gallifrey is that now that they're aware of this alternate universe Doctor's existence, the Time Lords deem him an aberration. He cannot stay in this universe because there is already a Doctor, so they're worried about the implications that a Doctor from another universe existing in this one has. I won't go too much more into it than that. Gallifrey has a really good conclusion where, just as the Doctor was getting homesick and he comes to Gallifrey, probably the closest thing he has to a home in this universe, and it just enforces why he left home in the first place. It's a really good story. I have nothing else to say beyond that. The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield, Volume 6, Lost in Translation, is one of the top releases in this series, and it also ranks as one of the Warner Doctor's best sets. I didn't talk about too much about performances in this particular review. Apologies for that, so I'll do it now. David Warner is in top form, and just the way this set expands on the Doctor's characterizations, and not just expands, but evolves him, is spectacular, and Warner is firing on all cylinders. He has a great chemistry once again with Lisa Bowerman, showing how their relationship has become strained. I'm going to get a little melancholy here now, just as I tease what's coming next. We have 3 releases left in this series, 2 of which I'm going to be reviewing. That third one, watch my intro video if you don't know what I'm talking about, but I'll talk about it again next video. This was the final set released in David Warner's life. He recorded his final 3 appearances as the Doctor while battling cancer before passing away in July of 2022. And those last 3 sets were released posthumously. Join me next time. Let me set the stage first. In his first appearance and subsequent appearances, the Doctor faced the Master. In his second appearance, the Doctor faced the Daleks. So join me next time when we will complete the trifecta. When the Doctor faces the Cybermen in the New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield, Volume 7, Blood and Steel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.